英伦大叔访谈系列节目，教育篇顶级私校招生。英国知名移民律师刘鹏为您带来解读英国顶级私校的系列节目，如何让您的孩子成功考入世界顶级私校？我们为您详细解读顶级私校的入学要求，从本质了解招生官的考核思路，为您的孩子规划人生的起点。敬请关注英伦大叔公众号，精彩节目持续更新。William Rees， 原伊顿公学招生负责人，英国教育专家，顶级私校入学咨询专家。
Thank you, William. It's very honored to have you to come over here to give us a little bit introduction of yourself and your understanding about the UK independent school system. So before we start, would you mind give us a little bit introduction of yourself or your experience in the system, please?
Right. Well, I've worked in independent education for more than 40 years now.
40 years.
It's not what I meant to do with my life, but it's what happened. I went to Eton College as a young teacher in the 1970s.
1970.
Kind of by accident.
Which subject?
French.
French.
And theatre studies.
Theatre studies.
And I meant to stay maybe 1 year, 2 years. And I stayed for 34 years.
34 years in Eton College?
Yeah. And I was a teacher, I was a sports coach, I was a play director, so I did all the kind of things that are expected of teachers, as well as of students in the independent boarding sector. And then I became a housemaster, and I was a housemaster for 14 years. 14 years housemaster? Responsible for the whole welfare, really, of 50 teenage boys.
50? At
any time.
Okay.
So you are their guide, you are their mentor, you are monitoring their academic progress, their personal progress, encourage them to make the most of themselves, and when necessary, disciplining them. When necessary.
Yeah, punish them sometimes?
When it's necessary.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after that, I became Director of Admissions at Eton. And I became Director of Admissions at the point when the school's entry system changed very radically. And I had to manage that new system, make it work.
Okay.
Communicate it, help people to understand it, because it was very different from the way things had been before. So the new system we introduced was transparent, meritocratic, whereas the previous system had been quite mysterious for getting into Eton. So we kind of opened up Eton, we made the whole thing more democratic. And I managed that whole process. And because Eton pioneered this new way of doing things, a lot of other schools came to me for advice.
All right, I see.
So one of the reasons why I decided to retire early from Eton, when the opportunity arose, was that I could then work independently as a consultant.
Yeah.
And I spent 3 years or so going into schools, advising schools on their admissions and marketing strategies and processes.
Yeah.
And then I moved on from that to the kind of work I mostly do now, which is advising families on schooling in the UK. Often families who have relocated to the UK and are maybe a bit late in the system and don't quite know what to do, and they need to have it explained and they need some help through it.
Yes.
So that's mostly the kind of work I do now.
Yeah. So you are focused on the personal education mentor to provide advice to the families, to give them the best value advice on their children's education plan. That's what you are doing now, right? So the next question would be, what's your experience or what's your understanding about the UK and the China education system? Because I know sometimes you travel to China to give speech to Chinese families. So what the difference between UK and the China education system?
I think Chinese education is very efficient.
Very efficient.
I think it's, from what I understand of it, it is a very linear system. It is a very straightforwardly efficient approach.
For the exam, you mean?
And it is focused on outcome.
Outcome.
It is a straight line journey to an outcome.
Yes.
And it's very much about the teachers delivering knowledge.
Yeah.
The students receiving the knowledge.
Yeah.
learning it, and then producing it when necessary when they get to the Gaokao at the end.
The result, the score.
Yeah. Whereas in Britain, although the outcome is important, the system in the UK is much more focused on the process rather than the outcome. And it's much more focused on developing the whole personality of the student.
Yeah.
And allowing the student to move at the student's own pace. And that will vary through an educational career.
Yeah.
Sometimes students will develop quickly, at other times they will need time to consolidate, to relax. In England, in the UK, students are allowed to make mistakes and recover from mistakes.
Yeah.
And have another try at things, or try something different. So the UK process is much more broad. I mean, maybe the Chinese system is like a river running in a direction.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, the process, if I can use the same metaphor, is like a kind of delta. It's lots of streams which eventually come together. And every individual student will go through that journey in a different way. And so in the UK, schools respond to that, and teachers respond to the personality of the individual student a lot more, I think. Having said that, there's admiration in the UK for Chinese maths teaching.
Maths teacher?
Yeah. There's a lot of interest in the UK in the speed of development in mathematics that's achieved in China, in particular. And a lot of British maths teachers are interested in how this is done.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I have met several Chinese students in the last couple of years who have said to me they have experienced both ways of learning maths, and they prefer the British way.
Why?
They like its more relaxed, exploratory approach, where the teacher isn't simply giving them problem, solution, but is allowing them more to think for themselves.
The logistic thinking, right?
Yeah. So I think that's the essence of the difference, as I understand it. But I must stress that I've never been in a Chinese classroom.
Okay, understood. Yeah, it's, from my understanding, it's different philosophy of education, because today's China, most of parents have no choice but to follow the environment, follow the big situation that you have to performance in certain level. You have to produce certain level of score, then you can reach another point, for example, secondary school, for example, the high school examination. So I don't think it's the parents' choice, but also the whole country's economic or environment's choice.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you advise on those family who wish to bring their kids to come over to adapt UK education system in terms of age, in terms of the philosophy of education, in terms of the preparation of the kids?
Yeah. Well, one of the most important things is that it requires time.
Time.
The later the Chinese family leaves it, the more difficult it becomes to maximize the options available within the system.
Yeah.
And if the aspiration is to go to very good schools, then the earlier you start thinking and planning, the better.
Yeah.
So if you have say a boy, you want your boy to go to a very good English senior boarding school at age 13, you need to start planning that when the boy is about 8.
Okay, so for example, if someone who wants to send the boy to Eton College, which is mean you suggest at least in the 8 or 9.
Well, you need to start planning and thinking.
Yeah, planning and thinking.
And the boy needs to be registered with Eton by
before
the age of 10.
Past 10. Yeah.
By the age of 10.
Age of 10.
During what we call year 5 in our education system, because the boy will be assessed in year 6.
Assessed in year 6. Yes.
And he will be offered that place to enter year 9.
Year 9, yeah.
So there's a real long-term planning involved here.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to transfer straight from China into a UK boarding school at age 13.
Yeah.
And that requires time, requires preparation. If the child is staying in China, then it's going to be necessary for the child to be prepared, to be tutored by people who understand the UK system.
Yeah.
But if the child is ready for it in social and emotional terms, and not all children are, then serious consideration needs to be given to putting the child in a preparatory school at the age of perhaps 10.
Before 10.
11 at the latest, to get them into the mainstream of the British way of doing things and the preparation for 13 plus entry. I mean, it is possible to find a place in a reasonably good school at 13 plus if you leave it until the child is maybe 12. But your range of options becomes much more limited. And you need to be quite lucky in terms of which school may have a vacancy at that point.
Next question is, from your experience, how many candidates apply for Eton College each year, and how many been accepted or been offered a place? What's the roughly acceptable rate for the
Well, there are probably 4 or 5 candidates for every place at Eton.
So 5 to 1.
Yeah, whereas, I mean, at the top London day schools, the number is much higher.
Okay, what's the rate for Westminster School?
I couldn't give you an exact figure, but it is probably much more like 10 or 12.
10 or 12 to 1?
To 1, and maybe even more these days. But at Eton, there are probably 4 or 5 candidates for every place.
So how many in total 1 year apply for Eton normally, roughly?
Well, you might get, say, 1,300 candidates
1,200
applying for 260 places.
260 places,
Something like that.
From my understanding, the decision-making process from Eton College is, one, you offer conditional place, or waiting list.
Or waiting list.
Or waiting list.
Or the third outcome is, sorry, nothing. How
many conditional offer issued each year? 260 straight away, or 200?
Yes, approximately.
260.
Approximately that number of places are offered at age 11.
Age 11.
And those places then have to be confirmed by a qualifying entrance exam at 13.
Common entrance.
Most boys will take common entrance. Some will try a scholarship exam. A few boys who are coming from different backgrounds, like poor backgrounds and state schools in the UK, they can take an alternative examination. And quite a lot of schools will do that sort of thing. But the best thing for Chinese candidates certainly is a clear-cut yes or no. Because the waiting list is a difficult place to be.
It's tough. It's very tough.
When you don't know what the outcome is going to be. And you need to have an alternative school arranged. So the application process is before 10, you have to register online to get an open day invitation. And in the year 11, you're invited to take the exam. And also in year 6.
Year 6.
Take the exam in year 6.
Year 6.
The year in which a boy becomes 11 is the year in which he takes the assessment.
At the same time is the academic exam and the interview exam.
And the interview.
At the same time.
And the school report.
And the school report.
So there are 3 elements. There is a test which is done on a computer.
On the computer, And how long for the test?
The test takes about an hour.
An hour? Including?
Verbal reasoning ability, numerical reasoning ability. Which isn't the same as maths. It's not a maths test.
Like kind of IQ.
It's a test of numerical intelligence. Reasoning ability.
Rather
than mathematical knowledge.
Can you see it's an IQ test?
And the third element is perceptual reasoning or spatial reasoning. And that was the most interesting when we introduced this test.
Or you introduced the test?
Well, I introduced it on behalf of Eton in 2001.
2001,
and it was designed for Eton by Durham University.
Durham University.
And the new thing in it was this perceptual element, spatial reasoning, 3-dimensional reasoning ability, that sort of thing. And that produces very interesting results. And sometimes reveals boys who have potential talent as engineers, artists, architects, designers, people who will be very strong in those fields, even though they may not be maybe so strong in traditional academic subjects. That was very useful information when we introduced that test. So they do the test, and that produces a measure of reasoning ability. We also required at Eton a detailed report from the current school.
Yeah.
So if a boy's coming from a Chinese school, that will need to be translated.
Of course.
By someone with ability and trustworthiness to translate the report. And then equally important is the interview.
Interview, yeah.
And when the assessment is finally made, the selectors are looking at those three elements, the test, the school report and the interview.
Yeah.
And the discussion that takes place and the decision that is made is not formulaic. It's a discussion made very much on an assessment of the boy by a group of human beings. Weighing up all the information. Right? The decision is not made by a computer.
Okay.
The decision is made by a group of people assessing all that evidence. And in some cases, the test result will be confirmed by the interview and the school report.
Yeah.
And they will all say pretty much the same thing. And there will be a consistent pattern.
Yeah.
Sometimes the interview will reveal aspects of that boy that are not evident from the test.
Okay.
About his personality, about his talents, about his motivation, about his potential for the future. So the interview is extremely important.
Yeah.
And the interview is done one-to-one, which for many Chinese students is a challenging experience.
Yes. How long is the interview going to take?
The interview at Eton takes about 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
15.
15 minutes, okay.
Which is quite long for some 11-year-old boys.
Yeah, yeah.
At other schools, the interviews are longer. At Winchester, for example, the interview will take about an hour.
Okay. So can you give me one or two simple questions? What the question is going to be asked in the interview?
The interviewer will begin with finding out what the boy's interests and enthusiasms are.
Okay.
So there'll be fairly simple questions at the beginning about tell me what you like doing.
What's your interesting?
What are your enthusiasms?
Yeah.
And what sports do you do and what cultural activities are you involved in?
Yeah.
What music do you do? Do you do drama?
Yeah.
Are you an artist? And finding out about the boy.
Basic general question.
And then from that, the interviewer will select areas to develop with the individual student.
Is there any formulated questions?
No.
No.
The interview does not follow a formula.
Okay.
I mean, there are basic principles.
But not formulated.
That the interviewers are trying to find out in certain categories about the boy, but every interview is unique.
Yes.
Every interview is a conversation. And that's what schools need it to be. All British schools who do interviewing are looking to have with that student a good conversation.
And the communication.
And as the interview develops, it's likely to become more challenging.
Yeah, more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, the challenging questions will be asked, and the student will be asked to give opinions, to justify those opinions in debate with a teacher. And this is an unusual experience for many Chinese children.
Yes.
So some of them find it very difficult and they don't quite know how to deal with it. So it's ideal if they can practice.
Okay.
That's
what I agree. They need some kind of advice on the make sure they are more comfortable in
what they don't need is for someone to tell them what to say.
Exactly. What
they do need is practice in the experience of being interviewed.
Under the pressure.
So that it becomes familiar to them. If students come out with phrases that somebody else has given them to say,
you can identify.
It is always obvious to the UK school
because they are child,
that they have been prepped, that these are not natural phrases for that child to use.
Yeah.
So you want the child to speak naturally, but you want the child to be confident and comfortable in that situation in order for their personality to come out.
Yeah. Okay, last question. So what's your thought on the difference between Eton, for example, Eton College and the Westminster School and Harrow or Winchester? So they are all very famous schools.
They're all very good schools.
Yeah, so what's the difference? And when you advise those parents of those family from China, what you are going to advise them when they have to make choice, Eton or Winchester or Harrow?
Well, it's very important that Chinese families who decide that they want the British way of doing education don't focus exclusively on a few famous schools, because those famous schools may not suit their child.
That's right.
and they're very difficult to get into.
Very difficult, yes.
And one of the things that I do, which I can do and do with Chinese families and families from other parts of the world, is to show them other schools
that
give
them
may
options.
Be much more suitable.
Suitable
and
is the
it's
key.
very important to apply to several schools, but at slightly different levels.
Yeah, exactly, like UCAS,
so you have a
right?
backup, you have an insurance.
Yeah.
The families can get it wrong by applying to, say, Eton, Harrow and Winchester.
Yeah, they are similar levels.
Which are all very at a very high level.
Yeah.
And if the boy doesn't get into any of those three,
they may lost.
Because they're very competitive.
Yeah.
You know, they've lost an opportunity to go to a school that is almost as good and may well suit their child better because their child will not feel so pressurized at a better school.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Sometimes, you know, if someone go to Tunbridge School or go to Suffolk School or go to Eton College, it's purely based on their personality, and especially very important to talk to the kids. Yeah. What's your plan? What's your interesting? You're interested in music, sport, maybe Westminster is not good choice for you, but Eton or Tunbridge may be good for you.
So there needs to be discussion about the balance between the aspirations of the parents and the reality of the child.
That's very important because most of Chinese parents don't care about the kids. I mean, the education.
But I mean, I have met a lot of Chinese parents over-focused on the famous schools, are not flexible and open in their thinking.
Yeah.
What Chinese parents need to decide is, do they want the British model of education? And if they do, then they should be flexible and open-minded about applying to a range of schools.
Yeah.
And maybe not getting into the very top ones, but getting into a good school that will get the best out of their child. You know, there are some schools which are absolutely brilliant at getting the best out of an average child.
Yeah. For example, you just mentioned this morning about the Canterbury King's School, right?
Like King's School Canterbury, for example, which will achieve very good academic results, not as high as Eton or Winchester, but very good academic results, but will bring the best out of that student across a range of activities in sport, in music, in drama, and develop the whole personality of the child. And there are many schools that will do that.